Hey there, welcome back to Tennille Talks. So before I begin this reading, I want to say that I used my Hoodoo Tarot deck for this one. And I only pulled 4 cards, but I just briefly want to review the meaning of the cards before I jump into the reading, because I probably won't stop to describe it. So this is the card of Justice, and on this card is Dr. Buzzard. Now, Dr. Buzzard was a lawyer in St. Helena, South Carolina, right? And the legend goes that Dr. Buzzard's father was from West Africa, but sent here to essentially Beaufort County, South Carolina. So here's the thing about Dr. Buzzard. When he was in court and he was responsible for defending guilty, or some of the guilty or tough criminals, he would chew root. And the thing about chewing root is that it would cause a lesser sentence, or the penalty would be harsher for anybody that he was defending. Now, there was like a sheriff in Beaufort County who would accuse Dr. Buzzard of practicing medicine while also practicing law. And when he got his main witness, when the sheriff got the main witness on the stand to prove that Dr. Buzzard was practicing medicine without a license, the person on the stand, the main witness, started to have convulsions and passed away. And so Dr. Buzzard was known to use root working. He would chew root in order to affect positively the cases that he was responsible for. And so that is the card of Justice. Now, this card, 9 of Knives, is essentially the 9 of Swords. And so in this card you see a skull, and surrounding the skull are peaches, and there are swords or knives stabbing into each of the peaches. And so the story that goes with that card is that 20,000 emancipated slaves in Mississippi were sent to concentration camps, and the concentration camp was at the bottom of the pit, and above the pit was essentially a peach grove. And so the knives and the peaches talk about the fact that a lot of those slaves died gruesome deaths, either starvation or disease. And so I believe that same area where the pit and the concentration camp is, that is what is called now the Devil's Punchbowl. And so all of the peaches that grow in that area, people don't eat them because they understand the soil that is beneath the trees, and they know that when you are eating those peaches that grow in that location, you're essentially eating the despair of all the slaves that died there. The next card I have is the 4 of Coins, and so this shows someone with a dowsing rod, but they also have a pine cross. They've got goose feathers in their hat, and I felt like there was one other thing, but nonetheless, this is a root worker. And a lot of times root workers were hired, and they would carry the pine cross, the dowsing rod, the goose feathers. They would carry that in order to find treasure. And so it was known that a lot of whites would hire root workers to bring whatever skills and assets they had in order to help them find buried treasure. So that is the 4 of Coins. Lastly, this card, this is the 9 of Sticks, which is essentially the 9 of Wands. And so here we have a woman with a mojo bag, a pistol, and a Bible. And behind her are 9 sticks, but on top of the sticks are her ancestors. And so this is essentially a woman that is strapped. She is prepared to fight, and she's been fighting. And her ancestors behind her have been supporting her, and they sit and they wait for her to request their help so that she can come through with the win. Okay, so those were the 4 cards, and the meanings are pretty much the same as traditional tarot, but I just think it's important to explain the imagery. All right, let me just get this. Okay. All right, so I'm about to say something that I really don't like to say, but in this reading, we have the energy of the twin flame. One of the reasons why I don't like talking about twin flame is because I never want us to get so comfortable with a title that we just jump into the box and call it that, right? And so I feel like boxes and labels and names, sometimes we get so comfortable with the box and the label that we don't read the energy. We don't test the spirit. We don't check out whether or not they have fruits of the flesh or fruits of the spirit, right? And so sometimes if people just say the right words, we'll jump into the box thinking that it's one thing, but we just forgot to read the energy to see if it was real. In this reading, so this is specific, everybody may not, be on this whole twin flame thing, but in this reading, for those of you that have been in a relationship with a twin flame, it seems like there was a period of separation. And in that separation, it shows that your twin flame was in the midst of a love affair. This was a love affair. Now, this talks about possibly a workplace love affair. And so they may have stepped away from your relationship because they were involved in something else. But the problem is that they were gone a little too long. And so when they come back to see you, you're not crying, you're not sad, you're not worrying. You're coming up as somebody who is essentially on vacation. You're taking a rest, you're enjoying life, you're free, you're recharging, you're satisfied and sleeping good. And so the true message to the twin flame that it's too late. And so if somebody walked away from you that you knew you were spiritually connected with, like your soul had a calling, if they walked away, you didn't cry, you didn't fight, you didn't chase, you just allowed the distance to be the distance. And while the separation was happening, anything that you would have poured into that person, you just poured into yourself. And so when they come back, you're looking like a brand new person. And you're looking like a brand new person because you found treasure, right? And you were able to manifest. And so now the same twin flame that walked away from you with no problem is now fighting, mad, having conflict with the fact that you somehow found stability, you found treasure, you found security, and you did it without them. A lot of times there are soulmates and twin flames that we are supposed to connect with in the form of a relationship, and we're supposed to share the bounty of our inheritance, like we're supposed to manifest together. But when somebody walks away from you, it doesn't mean that you walk away from your path. It just means that everything that you would have done with that person, maybe you're doing by yourself, right? But remember, you're never by yourself, right? And so maybe you had to fight. Maybe you needed your ancestors' guidance, but you got your pistol, your Bible, your mojo bag, you got your knowledge, you have everything you need to do, even when you have to walk this path alone. And so you essentially gained bliss. We have the energy of profit, right? You cultivated something, right? And you did it without your counterpart. And so essentially this person was lost in their own flesh, lost in their own lust and desires. And maybe they consider that to be bliss. And so when they were finally ready and awake to come and find you, there was nothing left for them to find. There's nothing left for them to do because you've essentially moved on. And so now what this is looking like for you is you may have been in cycles where people kept wearing masks. People were not loyal, right? And so no more can you connect with people who are not going to be loyal. They're not going to keep their word. They're not going to be true. When people show you who you are, you believe them, and then you move accordingly. And so you have matured. And so if you have felt like you have dealt with people who have been deceptive, people who have been dishonest, maybe they spoke the whole twin flame thing. Maybe they had all the buzzwords. Maybe they mirrored your divinity, your spirituality. Maybe they appeared to be emotionally mature, emotionally available, or emotionally intelligent. It was only a matter of time for them to start to behave and act in their true nature. And so the beautiful thing is that you just allowed it, right? Because we can't control people. And I think anybody that seeks to control anyone else, it's a sense of delusion because you've lost control of your own life. So what makes you think you will successfully control another, right? And so you could have been in cycles with this type of energy, or maybe specifically with this relationship, the breaking up, the coming back, the breaking up, the coming back. But I feel like after this last separation, you were like, okay, what do I have? What am I left with, right? And so this is recognizing that your path is not dependent on anybody else being by your side. Even if you are destined to have a soulmate, even if you are destined to have a twin flame, free will is always on the table. And at any point in time, people can use their free will, and maybe they don't choose to get in a relationship. Maybe they want to go play. And that's fine. And I think you knew it was fine and you didn't fight it. And instead, what you would have poured in them, you poured into self, and you found treasure. You manifested stability and security. You're comfortable, you're asleep, you're at rest. And so imagine this is my thing. Imagine you meet your twin flame, right? You go through a period of separation. Now, how you respond to the separation, it determines the type of reward that you are going to receive, right? And so imagine you separating and your twin flame has been lost in lust. They've been lost in affairs. They've been fleeting their flesh, right? But you, on the other hand, when you separated, you just went to work. You went to work on self, right? You started to grow self. We have the energy of self-love. And so this is like, oh, so you're walking away, so you can't see my worth and my value? Okay, no problem. I've already found it, so I will just go work with what I've found to be true about myself, even if you can't recognize that truth. So this is like you having no problem, which is why you finally could close out this cycle. Now, there may have been connections previously where maybe you gave people a lot of chances. Maybe you gave people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you waited for people to return. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But if this is a cycle, this means that the way you responded right now to this possible twin flame, you've not really responded like this too many times in life, which is maybe why this person felt like they had a long leash. And maybe they felt like when they were done using the distance of their leash, they could just come on back home. But there was no home to be found. And the home that you built, it was not a home that they helped you build. And so for them to be able to experience your royalties or your treasures is crazy, because the outcome, the reward, it must match the work you did. And so, sir or ma'am, if you slept around, if you were feeding your flesh, and if you were dealing with affairs, well, then your outcome needs to look like the work you put in. And if you were putting in a lot of lustful work, then think about the outcome that you're going to get. And so if you turned inward and you just located your own value, located your own worth, and went to work, then your reward looks like gain. It looks like manifestation. It looks like stability, right? And so this is coming out as a fated event. It was always going to happen this way. Maybe you've called this person your twin flame, maybe not. But the reason why this is coming up as a twin flame is I feel like this was a very strong mirror, meaning something inside of them was showing you the exact thing that you needed in order to jump into your own divinity, in order to finally manifest the version of self and the life that you really wanted, you know. And sometimes there are certain people that are going to hit you so deep in your core that you have no choice but to pick yourself back up. And initially it doesn't feel good, but once you pick yourself up and you start walking and you start creating and you start building and you start loving on yourself unapologetically, like at some point you'll kind of be like, damn, like, thank you. Like, not that you couldn't get here without them, but like you kind of needed, you know, there's certain kind of pain that'll send you right into your purpose. There's certain kind of pain that'll send you right into your purpose. And so this is almost like, surprise, justice is here. Your justice is essentially you moving on, right? And so what was done to you, it wasn't necessarily respectful. It wasn't fair. Your twin flame is coming up in the energy of a flying monkey. And so that's that kind of energy, you know, where people can be controlled, and what controls them is really kind of like this narcissistic energy. And so these are kind of people pleasers. These are people that you can kind of just reach your hand in their head and tell them what to do. And so for somebody to follow their flesh, this is somebody that didn't have self-control. They didn't know how to turn off their sexuality. They didn't know how not to put the bottle down or to stop smoking or stop drinking. You know, this is somebody that was just at the mercy of impulse. And so maybe they thought that you would be there after they finished fulfilling the impulse and the urge. But right now, this person is ready to fight. Now, I don't know if they're communicating that to you, but maybe inside of them, they are really conflicted that you were able to build something without them. And so this is also giving me the energy of somebody with a inflated ego. Because anything that you build, you're going to build it with the Most High. So this is almost somebody like who thought that they were God in your life. And they thought that if they left, you would sit there almost like a lost puppy, just waiting for them to return. But now that you've moved on, this is essentially how you get your justice back, by not being there when they return. And it's not out of despite. It's not out of bitterness. It's not out of resentment, but it is out of self-love and growth. Like, why would I wait for somebody that didn't see me to return and possibly see me? You know, let me tell you, when I think about relationships now that I'm a mom and I have 2 sons, in terms of dating, if there is a man that like maybe I'm interested in or shows me interest, when I look at them, I think to myself, is this who I would want my son to become? Like if my son right now were to like grow 30 years in a day and he was to turn out like you, would that make me peaceful, happy, and content as a mother? When I think about my sons having relationships in the future in their adulthood, I want their spouse and their partner to thank me for the work that I've done to kind of develop and grow and mature and nurture them into the men that they are becoming, right? And so when a man approaches me, I'm thinking like, would this be the type of son that I would want to raise? Does this reflect my work? Does this reflect the work that I do with my children daily? And if I don't see that reflection shown to me in the form of a partner that may be interested in me, then I cannot go forward. Because they become the model, they become the mirror. And that's the same for a man that's choosing a woman. If you have little girls, is the woman that you're choosing, the way she dresses, the way she speaks, the way she, like, is that the woman that you would love to see your daughters become? And I think that when I look at it that way as a parent, it is so much easier to read their spirit. It is so much easier to read their spirit, to test them, to read their energy. So that could be a method that we use, twin flame or not, soulmate or not. Would I be glad to say that this is the man that I raised? And so if you can't step in front of me like that and give me that joy, then I wouldn't allow my sons to watch you for years and days and months, because God willing, they can become who they want anyway. But what I'm saying is I'm not going to help them. I'm not going to help them by putting a flawed person, and flaws, we're all flawed, but some of us are very comfortable with our flaws, and they pursue them and they chase them. And so, exposure. I think our children become what we're exposed to. So for those of us that have been in relationships and we have children and we're building new relationships, the person that you date, it should look like the child that you were raising just in the future, if you can help it. So anyway, this person is recognizing that they made an accident. They made it an accident, but they only know they fucked up because you're moving on. Now, they're coming out as wanting to apologize. They're wanting to apologize, but I think that the apology is part of a strategy. I still don't trust the energy of this person. And so this is specific, but if somebody returns to you and they're apologizing for their absence, if they're apologizing for the way that they treated you, I feel like at the core of the apology is envy and jealousy. They're not sorry, but they're really upset that you were able to accomplish what you did in their absence, right? Which is why we have the conflict about your ability to manifest or your ability to find treasure, right? And so when this person comes to apologize, you have to test the spirit, because all of us are not in the same situation. But right now, in terms of you are showing up as somebody that is living in the energy of indulgence. This is your season of praise and worship, where you can dance and sing and say thank you. This is also the season where you can put your demands on the table. Now, when you put your demands on the table, are you putting them out to that person and saying, okay, we can be together if you do this, this, and this? Is that the way you put your demands on the table? Have you totally walked away from them entirely? Or is there a relationship in your future where you're like, you know what? Now that I cross paths with you, now I know the boundaries. Now I know how to speak up at the beginning of the connection. Now I know what to say. Now I know what to stand for, And so putting your demands on the table, maybe that is what you did by walking away. Maybe that is what you did by moving on. Now, I almost see that the love affair, the reason why the love affair even took place is because they thought that this was a part of moving up. And so this is like your twin flame looking at you and looking at another person. And like I said, judging the box and not really testing the energy. And so maybe side by side, maybe there was someone maybe at work or elsewhere in life that looked like they were more stable. Maybe they looked like their life was going to be more promising, right? And so this person is essentially having fun with the person that they choose or chose to be better than you. Maybe they saw that, but remember, this is about the flesh. So this is not somebody that can see in the spirit. This is a flying monkey, right? This is pretty much a copy and paste of the common man or the common woman. These are not people that can think or navigate their own lives or their own minds. They are just kind of living this program, which is very lustful and very it's flesh. It's all flesh. And so I see that he thought that it was moving up, but he's divorcing that connection. And I think one of the reasons why he's divorcing is he's robbing. He's something like he lost something. He could have lost time. He could have lost energy. He could have lost money, resources, relationships. And so the very thing that he jumped in that thought was going to take him to the land of promise has essentially left him with nothing. And so that 9 of Swords energy, you know, this is essentially him eating fruit. He ate those peaches that only led him to despair. He didn't look beneath and understand the soil that was growing in that person. He didn't test the energy. He didn't test the spirit. He just saw it was a peach and like, let me eat it. And now this person has anxiety, right? And the only way they can think of that they can end their anxiety is to essentially get back in good with you. So what I'm also seeing is you're on this journey, and the journey isn't stopping. You're going to a new place, whether you are physically moving or just energetically. You are moving to a new place inside of yourself. Now, for some of you, maybe you're working or you're traveling, but this is about you taking the proper experience that you need in order to succeed. And so you're living a life of comfort, but this is your twin flame. Overloaded, overworked, overwhelmed. That is not your energy. But the reason why they feel overloaded is because you are at peace. They recognize that it is too late. You've already manifested the next thing and you did it without them. Their energy is not on anything you created. You did that alone. Now, this is coming up as fate, meaning it was always going to happen this way, right? If one of you made a very worldly decision, then obviously the separation was going to happen because spiritually you just didn't align anymore. And this is about your ability to be able to test the spirit. Will this lead me to joy? Will this lead me to despair? The flying monkey twin flame couldn't determine that this affair or whatever they involved, they couldn't see that this was going to take them to despair because they were living in their flesh. It was a flesh fruit. They only had one outcome. But for you not to wait and for you to instead work on yourself, love yourself, right? Display your own value and worth to yourself. What is your outcome? Well, then you have a fruit of the spirit called joy. And so you're sitting in the energy of joy and bliss, but you've also closed out a cycle, which means nobody can join my journey if they're not loyal. And the main person that you must be loyal to is self. Anybody that lives in their flesh, your body is dying every day. And so to make choices based on something that is dying, right? Like the outcome of that, you know, at some point you lose your health, you lose your hair, your waistline expands, maybe your sex organs don't work anymore. But if that's all you've invested in yourself, when your body starts to break down, well, then who are you? That is a question you already know. That is a question you already understand. And so I almost feel like this is the type of twin flame journey where you are actually the leader. You are actually the guide. And it is by the way you walk and live your life that they get to experience the right path, the right approach, the right way. And so if this sounds to be your connection, whatever they jumped in, it essentially is their karma, meaning everything that they couldn't see in you the first time, they're now seeing it, but they could not have seen you unless they essentially burnt off those desires. Their flesh was too loud. The flesh was too loud. And so if you don't live in the flesh and you live in the spirit, essentially you're speaking different languages, right? And so they had to go find somebody that spoke their language. But the outcome of speaking that language, nobody likes that reward. And so you're looking like you like your reward because you made a decision that was based on the spirits of your fruit as opposed to the spirits of your flesh. And so in this season, listen, you can put all your demands on the table. You are climbing the ladder, you are moving up. And I think this person is feeling like they were supposed to move up. They were supposed to go with you. But if you didn't do the same amount of work during the separation, then why or how is it possible that you both meet at the same outcome? How is it possible that you both end at the same destination? And so just be mindful of somebody returning. Now, there is an apology. You'll have to determine whether or not the apology is real and genuine. And it may be good for them to apologize because that shows growth. Not that you have to grow together, not that you have to allow them back in, but it allows them to see how grace is offered. even when they've done something that doesn't make you feel good. It's like, I can forgive you, I can accept, and I can understand, but the boundary is still the boundary, and the limits have been set. When you show me that you were disloyal, when you show me that you are not true, when you lie, when you deceive, right? When your flesh is so loud that you can't even keep your word, that's not the energy that I can carry with me on my divine path. And so when that person walked away from you, you got your mojo bag, you got your Bible, you got your pistol, and you got your ancestors. They're like, we got this, right? And so you were in the season of receiving offerings, right? But it's only because of the work you put in. And so if this is your story, I think it's kind of specific because it's twin flame. Be proud of yourself. It doesn't feel good to be abandoned. It doesn't feel good to be neglected. It doesn't feel good to be picked over, or to see somebody's value that just doesn't see yours. And everybody needs their time to unfold. But if you've already learned that lesson, you don't have to wait for somebody else to catch up. Because then you're kind of delaying your own gratification. You're delaying your reward for what you've just accomplished. So be proud of yourself, because this is a season of justice. And the justice in this situation is you moving on. When you move on, it teaches this person that they made an accident, they did something dangerous, and they actually injured themselves. I think that if they would have chose you, their pockets probably wouldn't be empty, their heart and spirit wouldn't be broke, they wouldn't be distorted, right? But when you choose something based on the immediate feeling or the immediate sensation, in the long term, you don't think about, how is this going to play out? Where is this going to take me? Sometimes you got to meet yourself in order to really see yourself. And so that's what I get the energy. You are in the season of indulging in everything that you've worked for, and this person is overwhelmed, right? And so they have divorced, per this reading, they have divorced from who they thought was going to be their rise to the top, but I only see that they divorced because they got robbed. And so I think they're strategizing about, I also want to say this. Obviously, this person is immature emotionally. And so the strategy, I feel like on one end, it's like, well, do I say sorry? On the other end, do I come in and cause conflict to whatever it is you're growing because I'm mad that you're growing it without me? And so obviously that's not the great, listen, if you were the twin flame who walked away and who fucked around in your flesh for too long, and you're deciding, do I go back and mess up what they've created? You're only going to make it worse. So don't choose that option. But if you do, you gotta deal with the consequences, right? A lot of us spiritual people, we don't make certain choices because we already understand the weight of the consequence, and I don't want to carry everything. So there are certain choices that I don't make because that's some heavy shit to carry, right? A lot of people, they've got to make it because their flesh is forcing them to. And sometimes the only way to grow is to do it and to learn later. This is somebody that's learning. This is somebody that don't want to be a flying monkey anymore. They want to be a manifester. They want to experience cultivation but they weren't loyal, right? And because they treated you, or because they weren't loyal to you, they fucked around and messed with somebody who wasn't loyal to them, who essentially could have robbed them. The same spirit that they thought was going to help them climb the ladder of success has now left them in this place of destruction. But let me ask you, what happens if the person they picked over you, what happens if everything went to plan? Would they ever return? Would they ever come back to you and apologize? Would they? No, because their choice would have worked out. And so I don't like this energy. I don't like when people come back when it goes wrong, right? Because I still don't think that's choosing you. I still don't think that's picking you. I think that they are recognizing that you were second best and they were wrong. But I just don't like the energy of adults apologizing. Change your behavior. If you're going to be accountable and if you're going to atone, you should never say sorry. You should just change your behavior. And it is in the behavior change that I will know if your apology is sincere, and I will know if you should accept the sorry. But if your justice is that you've moved on and you've already started manifesting, then I'd say keep on moving, because your journey is set. And I don't understand how people can make different choices and think that you are still going to end up at the same destination. I think that if you were to offer yourself to them again, I'm being very opinionated. So I'm sorry. I'm being opinionated right now. This is all to Neil. But I don't I don't think that this person will ever see your value. They will only know who you are based on what the other person was not. Like, you know, like they just can't grasp your greatness yet. They still, even if they appear to see it. So yeah, I love y'all. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.